Tom Johnson, I wish I was where you are.
I wish I was where my background is.
I'm Rich London. I'm up here at our office and with the Washington Research Institute.
Hi, Rich.
Hi, Barb. I'm sorry, I wasn't muted.
Good morning, everyone.
Mute is a good thing.
How you doing, John?
Doing good. Doing good.
Before we start, this is Corey Adams with TUD. I would like to ask people if they are not speaking, other than our board members, if they're not speaking, to please mute yourself just to keep feedback down. I know we were getting some feedback from Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors, so if possible, unless we're able to fix that feedback, if we could mute you until you're actually speaking, just to stop the feedback.
Corey, this is Tom Johnson, just a sound check for me.
You sound fine.
Thank you.
Is that correct?
Well, let's see.
Good morning, everyone. President Balin, we are ready to go when you are ready to call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay. So I would like to call the special joint board meeting to order on Thursday, February 18th, 2021 at 10 a.m. And we will first begin with the call to order, and this will be done for all of us that are here in quorum. So Melissa, why don't you first call us to order, and then we will turn it over to the Board of Supervisors for their verbal roll call, and then to the city. So go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, thank you. I'll now conduct a verbal roll call. Director Balin?
Here.
Director Boatwright?
Here.
Director Kearns?
Here.
Director Murphy?
Here.
Director Regan?
Here.
Okay, all 5 directors are present.
Thank you. Board of Supervisors?
All right, greetings, President Balin. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Just fine.
All right, well, thanks very much. So I will call this special meeting of the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors to order. I'll look to our county clerk, Christina Cunha, to read the roll call of the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors.
Supervisor Goldenberg.
Present.
Supervisor Campbell.
Present.
Supervisor Kirk.
Present.
Supervisor Half.
Present.
Supervisor Brandon.
Present. Sort of. Present. Sort of.
All accounted for.
Thank you. And now gee, I think there's an echo here. I don't know exactly if it's on my end or not. Maybe not. Okay. So how about the city council, please? Call to order.
This is Mary Rose Rutaconga with the City of Sonora, City Administrator. Our mayor unfortunately cannot join us, so our Mayor Pro Tem is on the line. Mark Plummer, if you can call the City of Sonora City Council meeting to order.
Just got on, so yes, I'd like to call I don't even know the right formulation for it, I'm sorry. But call the city to order for this special meeting.
I will take roll call. Mary Rose Ruti County will take roll call for the City of Sonora City Council members. Mayor Pro Tem Plummer.
Here.
Councilmember Garaventa.
Hi, I'm here.
Councilmember Such. I believe Councilmember Such is on. I don't know if you guys heard her. Councilmember Sagerstrom. Don't hear her. And the Mayor Hawkins is absent.
Thank you. Okay, so it looks like all those that are present are present. And now I would like to have us all join with our mute on, but join Lisa Murphy, if you would be so kind as to say the pledge on behalf of all of us. And then we'll all, if everyone can be put on mute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Murphy. Thank you. All right, a little bit of business here. Our first agenda item is the public forum. And we would like to welcome the members of the public who have taken the time to attend the meeting and provide comments on matters related to our business. It's not on the agenda. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, the board cannot act on any item unless it was noticed on the agenda. Persons speaking during the public forum will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board or boards at this time. So with that, I will open it up to any member of the public that wishes to address the boards on any item not on this current agenda. Corey, is there any hands raised?
Yes, we do have one, and I'd also like to remind everybody to please go ahead and digitally raise your hand within Zoom, and we'll call them as they come up in order. And if you are on a landline, to hit *9 to digitally raise your hand. With that, we do have one, John Buckley. Go ahead.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Good
John.
morning, John Buckley, CSERC, and I'm going to be less than 5 minutes. So first, on the topic of water availability for new connections, I was unable to participate last week. And I want to be fair to Ron Kopp and a lot of others who would value what I think I will be sharing here. All of us who are customers of TUD and other water agencies in the state are going to at times need to conserve and shrink our water use when there's droughts. But TUD's contractual supply through PG&E provides enough water every year, including in drought, that TUD does have sufficient water to supply new water connections, whether it's for the Stone Mill project or whatever other project. So as the 40-year FERC relicensing plan for the South Fork Stanislaus is being finalized, some of you participating in it know that we are all working to ensure that TUD's water supply will continue to be adequate into the future. I do believe there's enough water for new supply connections. Shifting to the topic of today, I hope the following is of value because it's a perspective that will be different than some that's presented by TUD. For those who aren't familiar with our center, we participated in 11 years of federal FERC hydro relicensing planning for the South Fork Stanislaus, including for Pinecrest, Lyons Reservoir, the Main Canal, and the Phoenix Powerhouse, and over 200 meetings that I participated in. There have been many discussions of TUD water supply and facts. For those who may not know, in 1983, PG&E sold the Tuolumne water system to the county. TUD later assumed ownership. As part of the sale, the 1983 water agreement legally requires PG&E to provide water to TUD through the main Tuolumne Canal at no cost to TUD. Based on that legally binding contract that has no end date, TUD gets free water year after year. It is PG&E that pays
Point
for
of
all the
order,
maintenance.
point of order, John, that is on the agenda today. Could
Yes,
you please
and-
hold your comments till we're finished with this? Because that is on the agenda. This is an
So-
opportunity to
so-
comment on things that are not on the agenda.
Yeah, and Barb, I'm fine with that, but your agenda does not show that there would be public comment for after the presentation. So again, if there is going to be, I will be glad to wait until then. Thank you.
Thank you. And you will have an opportunity. Thank you, John. Yes, Mr. London. Oh, sorry, Corey, is there any other comments?
Not at, I see at this moment, no.
I do believe we have somebody
President.
on Zoom who raised their hand physically.
Yes, that's me. I'm Richard J. London, geologist and director of Wangina Research Institute. And I wanted to just go on the record as saying that our Confidence Ridge project is moving along, and that the 1.85 million 1.85 million gallons of the water in the mine of the Confidence Mine might be available in the future through a pump storage program, our Wangina Research Institute Confidence Ridge project, in which we would be using solar power from a field off Confidence Road to pump water out of the Confidence Mine, and possibly finding the storage in one of the empty storage tanks of TUD for temporary storage. Then the water be going back down to the mine, but the water's there, and we've tested it. Dr. Ross Grunwald, myself, tested the water and was tested by Castle Analytical, and is suitable for drinking water, and so it's available for emergency use, and we have the rights to use it for this process by the owners of the water rights of the Confidence Mine.
Thank you, Richard. Corey, any other hands that are raised?
No, digitally, no.
Okay. Well, then that
President
will
Balin.
conclude- Excuse me.
President
I'm
Balin.
sorry.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. If Tuolumne County has some additional information to provide to the public for audiovisual engagement in the meeting. If we could have an opportunity to do that at some point before we begin with the rest of the meeting, that's what we'd be looking for.
Would you like to do that now?
I would be delighted to do that now. I'll turn it over to our county, our board clerk.
Additional options for audio visual only, no method for participation. Please go to the Tuolumne County website at https://www.tuolumecounty.ca.gov/745/board-meetings. Thank you.
And thanks very much.
Okay. Any further public comment? All right. Hearing none, then we will go on to regular business and the reason we're here today. Melissa, would you please read our regular business item?
Number 1, presentation on the Pacific Gas and Electric Phoenix water rights and facilities acquisition and the United States Bureau of Reclamation New Melones Central Valley Project water supply contract.
Thank you. I wanted to begin this by giving everyone a warm welcome to attending our meeting and our presentation today. I especially want to give a warm welcome to our sovereign nations, the Tuolumne Band of Miwok Indians, and the Chicken Ranch Rancheria of Miwok Indians, our Board of Supervisors, our City Council, Twain Harte Community Services District, and other distinguished guests and past board members. And also a warm welcome to our community, because they are our backbone. And we also have another backbone, and that is our staffs and our teams that put this presentation together and also do all the hard work. So thank you for that. Before we begin, let's take a moment to think about the people and the critters that are facing the bitter cold in Texas right now. Our hearts go out to you, and we know you are strong and are pulling together as we have done in our community in the face of fire and drought. We know what it's like to sacrifice. And if anything, this community knows how to tighten its belt. When it comes to drought, we have let our landscapes die. We have let lawns die and trees die, and we can shower in a bucket. To make matters even more difficult, we know what it's like to face the threat of fire during a PG&E stoppage. And that's very, very scary. So today, I'd like us to think about what local control of our water could mean to the people who live here. How do we want water to work for us? How do we want to move from uncertainty and fear of not having enough water for fire protection or even fire insurance to the direction of certainty and, again, local control? I look at water as life. We all look at water as life. It is our most basic life-giving resource. And without it, our community and our environment and our economy cannot thrive. So with that, I would like to move into our two presentations today, and they will be talking about this topic. We currently have our eggs in one basket. And as John Buckley mentioned, it is the contract with PG&E. We have an opportunity to actually own senior water rights. As most of you know, our county never perfected our senior water rights, and that is to actually own some of the most oldest water rights on our county. Those are first in time, first in right water rights. And that means that in terms of drought, we would be at the head of the table. What I'll do now is introduce our guest speakers one at a time. We have two presentations, and then we will move into a discussion and questions, and I'll be able to field those questions to the appropriate individual. And I'd like to open it up to the circle of leaders as we discuss what it would be like to increase our water portfolio. So our first speaker today is Tom Johnson. Tom is TUD's chief negotiator with the acquisition of the PG&E assets and water rights. Tom has had I'll just back up, sorry. Tom has had success in negotiating the divestiture of for-profit assets, which are PG&E assets, into the public domain, such as TUD. And so I'll let Tom take it from here. He can say a few more words on his behalf, and then he will begin his power presentation on PG&E, and then we will hold our questions. Then we will have our next presenter, and then we'll begin to have a discussion after that. So welcome, Tom, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Director Balin and members of the community. Corey, can you allow me to share screen, please? It looks like I'm disabled at the moment.
Yep, hold on just a moment. Go ahead, try now.
Very good. Great, thank you. I appreciate being able to be here today and share a little bit about the PG&E asset acquisition. As Director Balin mentioned, I have been working in hydroelectric and energy transactions in California for over 35 years. For probably, 30 years of that, I've worked on the other side of the table from PG&E in a number of different circumstances, power contracts, operations agreements, and the actual purchase and sale of assets from PG&E. I've worked on a number of these. I'm currently working on 3, and so I have a fairly extensive history in PG&E, their way of doing business, and asset divestiture. So I was contacted by TUD a couple of years ago and have been involved with the TUD team in working on this transaction for that period of time. Let me just start by providing a little bit of background about PG&E and its plans for asset divestiture. A number of years ago, PG&E made the strategic and tactical decision to dispose of some of its more remote or underperforming assets, primarily hydroelectric assets. And PG&E always has an eye to benefits for its ratepayers. Its mission is to provide electrical service and to do so at a low cost and in compliance with all of the PUC and other regulatory directives that it must follow. So PG&E initiated a review of its assets. It came up with a list of somewhere between 10 and 15 assets that it targeted for divestiture. It has been successful in divesting a number of assets. Its disposition has taken several forms. It looks, first and foremost, if possible or if logical, to sell to a local buyer. And so in a number of its divestitures, it has gone to a local water agency or a nearby power generating entity that perhaps shares the same river or water course and has talked one-on-one with them first. If there is no logical local buyer, then PG&E has advertised assets for sale and conducted an auction process with sealed bids, discussions, negotiations with the high bidder, and then ultimately a sale. And on a couple of occasions, it has taken the option to surrender the license and give up the license, opening that license for application by others. And if no one comes forward, then the surrender process continues. PG&E has successfully transferred several facilities, including Chili Bar, Merced Falls, Deer Creek, Narrows 2, probably a couple of others that I am not thinking of. Most of those were bilateral discussions and negotiations with local buyers. In the last 2 or 3 years, there have been a number of solicitations out on the street, and I'm aware of at least a couple that are currently in negotiations with third-party buyers. In other words, people who are neither water utilities or necessarily local to California, but are interested in purchasing assets. PG&E, wrong direction. PG&E approached TUD sometime, I believe, in 2016 with the idea of divesting the Phoenix project. And PG&E has been fairly clear that the Phoenix project is on its list for divestiture. It is approaching Tuolumne Utilities District first, and if TUD is unable to successfully or isn't willing or interested in completing a transaction, then PG&E would be open to taking other steps, such as putting the assets up for sale. Over the course of a number of discussions that I would characterize as exploratory over the course of 2016 and 2017, TUD and PG&E discussed a number of different structures and combinations of assets that would potentially be transferred, starting with obviously the Phoenix project, and then we did discuss TUD acquiring the entirety of the Spring Gap Stanislaus system. For a number of reasons, that was not ideal for either PG&E nor TUD, and ultimately settled on Phoenix plus the Strawberry Dam and Pinecrest Reservoir assets as the combination of assets that both best met the interests of both TUD and PG&E. And so moving forward with PG&E, we have been discussing the transfer of all of the Phoenix project and Strawberry plus Pinecrest. The assets that are included in this transaction on the Phoenix system, and apologize for most of you who are local and you probably know and understand the logistics of these assets as well or far better than me, but I did want to just go through them for completeness. The Phoenix system includes Lions Dam and Reservoir, the Tuolumne Main Canal, and the Phoenix Powerhouse. In addition, there's a number of real estate assets. There are some amount of land, mostly around Lions Dam. There are also roads and road easements that are associated with the project, some of those within the project boundaries, some not. There's a handful of water rights that are associated with the Phoenix project, and then there are all of the operational authorities, which would include the FERC license and various other authorities and permits that allow operation of the system. Strawberry Dam and Pinecrest Reservoir includes that dam and that reservoir. My understanding is that Pinecrest Lake is around 300 acres. There's an additional 97 acres of project land that goes with Pinecrest. It is 10 to 300 feet from the water's edge to the edge of the land, and typically it's around 200 feet. All of the Strawberry development is within the Stanislaus National Forest. In addition, there are water rights and regulatory authorities that are specific to Strawberry Dam and Pinecrest Reservoir. In other words, they don't overlap with the Phoenix system. They are separate. And there are additional real assets, lands, roads, easements. There's a few small buildings that house equipment specific to the project and so forth. One of the key and frankly most important assets that comes with these projects are the water rights assets themselves. As Director Balin mentioned, the pre-1914 rights are the most senior in the state. Jesse can speak more to water rights law if there are questions on this, but basically prior to 1914, all of those rights are, as a group, considered the most senior in the state and are exempt from some of the regulatory constraints or requirements that post-1914 rights are. In particular, the pre-1914 rights include storage at Pinecrest Reservoir, direct diversion of up to 52 CFS into the Tuolumne Main Canal year-round, and storage for the first 839 acre-feet in Lions Reservoir. Beyond those pre-1914 rights, there is another group of 1928 rights that include increased storage at Lions Reservoir. Apparently, Lions Reservoir was expanded sometime in the 1920s, and then also for rights for hydrogeneration at the Phoenix Powerhouse. 1928 rights, while obviously not as senior as 1914, are still some of the older rights in the state, and still would have priority over many, if not most, or all of the other rights in the Stanislaus River watershed. The bottom line is With this handful of rights, the TUD, well, the owner of these rights gets their water first. In addition to the physical assets, there's a number of obligations that would come with ownership of these projects. Some of these are new to TUD. Some of these are would simply expand TUD's existing portfolio of facilities and obligations. First of all, there's Lyons and Strawberry Dams. These would be new facilities, but not a new concept. TUD currently owns and operates Phoenix Reservoir. With Phoenix Dam, it is DSOD jurisdictional. It is a high hazard dam, and TUD has extensive history in operating Phoenix Reservoir. Lyons and Strawberry Dams have been in place for quite some time, on the order of 100 years. They have extensive history, literally going back 100 years. And the regulatory, what I call playbook, the rules that you must comply with for dam operations is very robust. Both FERC and DSOD have oversight authority, and simply following the rules leads to a high degree of compliance, robustness, and operational efficacy for that type of facility, for the dams. The Tuolumne Main Canal is larger than most of TUD's existing canal system, but it is very much of a piece. TUD currently operates many, many miles of canals and flumes, and so adding another 15 or so miles of the Tuolumne Main Canal is certainly within the existing portfolio of assets and capabilities. Phoenix Powerhouse is something new. TUD is not currently in the power generation business, and there are a lot of things mostly having to do with interconnection to the electrical grid, which will be a new area of business for TUD. However, the Phoenix Powerhouse itself is a relatively straightforward affair. It's relatively small, it's old but in very good condition, and in terms of technical complexity, it frankly is equivalent to or perhaps less complicated than some of TUD's water and wastewater processing facilities. The other good thing at the end of the day with a power generation facility is if something goes wrong, it shuts itself off. And once you get it sorted out, you turn it back on, unlike water and wastewater facilities that must operate 24/7, 365. The powerhouse is a little more flexible in its ability to be taken out of service, worked on, and operated at under the control of TUD in an on-demand way. The various and sundry lands, roads, and secondary facilities would be additions to TUD's current inventory, and there will be additional communication and control infrastructure, at least one microwave tower, various communication links, SCADA control, and so forth. Again, all of that would be integrated into TUD's existing systems in a fairly transparent way. Some of the other obligations that come with these projects include regulatory obligations. There would be FERC licenses, separate ones for the Phoenix project and for Strawberry Pinecrest. There would be 401 water quality certifications for both facilities, again separate. The U.S. Forest Service has various conditions that apply to these projects, and then there are other minor state and local authorities and permits. All of these various documents are pretty extensive. There's no two ways about it. And the obligations, I'm not going to go through them in detail, but just at a high level by category. So there's a variety of obligations that fall into operational. And what I mean by that is that there are things like minimum in-stream flow requirements, ramping rates for whenever flows are changed, reservoir elevation targets, and so forth. In addition, there are monitoring obligations, monitoring of dams, of course, and then also monitoring of things like flows, temperatures, and potential impacts of project operations on fish, vegetation, or wildlife. In particular, both the FERC and State Water Board permits have a number of monitoring obligations. Some are just monitor and report if something changes. Others require annual reporting. There are obligations, regulatory obligations associated with maintenance. As I mentioned earlier, the dam regulations are fairly extensive between FERC and DSOD. There are also canal, road, and road maintenance obligations in the FERC and the Forest Service regulations, and then also prudent utility practice for maintenance of the powerhouse. The various regulatory documents have obligations for dam and fire safety, both monitoring, reporting, and actions in the event of something going wrong. There are notification and reporting requirements. Typically for a hydroelectric project, you develop a calendar, if you will, for when things need to be reported on the daily, weekly, monthly, or annual time step. And then finally, there are recreation obligations associated with both Lions and Pinecrest. This too is something new for TUD. TUD does not normally have regulatory recreation requirements, although there may be certainly recreation use around some of the canals and Phoenix Lake, but there are specific and formal recreation requirements, which includes both operation and maintenance of facilities, and then monitoring and reporting of recreational use. I wanted to talk just a little bit about costs and revenues, although I admit that this topic will need much more thorough discussion with the public at some point in the future. All of the cost information that TUD has received so far has come from PG&E, and all of that is protected under a confidentiality agreement. When TUD entered into a preliminary term sheet with PG&E for purchase and sale of these assets, that term sheet did a number of things. It outlined the broad structure of the agreement. It committed PG&E and TUD to exclusive bilateral negotiations. In other words, neither party is talking to others. And thirdly, it provided a shroud of confidentiality over both the discussions and all of the information that is shared by PG&E. This is done to protect PG&E's interests. We do not, at this time, have an executed purchase and sale agreement with PG&E, although we are working diligently towards that. And if for some reason this deal was to not work out, and TUD was to back out, then PG&E wants to have its ducks in a row, so to speak, to be able to go forth and discuss sale of this project to others. And so at this time, the cost information is all proprietary, and I cannot share much with you today. Similarly, the revenue information is also proprietary. What I can tell you is that the revenues from the power generation from Phoenix Powerhouse will not be sufficient to cover the cost of operations. It may or may not be a surprise to you that this is perhaps one of the reasons that PG&E is interested in divesting of this project. PG&E does not charge for water, as you're well aware, and the revenue from generation is not sufficient to cover the cost of operations. So from a generation standpoint, this is not one of PG&E's more valuable assets. In order to make up that shortfall, TUD or another owner will need to raise revenue from other sources. Again, this is the sort of topic that will require extensive discussion among and between your boards, and will need some serious amount of public vetting. But there are other revenue sources associated with the water side that could be considered to fill in the gap between power generation revenues and operating costs. Things that have been discussed as possibilities would be something like a water rate increase or a tax or other dispersed benefits assessment across a broader range of people or properties. I believe those revenue options will be discussed in the coming months. We'll talk a little more about schedule in the future in the next few slides. We'll come back to this. Let's talk a little bit about the transaction process itself. PG&E, as I mentioned earlier, has divested a number of assets, and so by now there's a reasonably solid playbook for how these things go. Typically, the way I think about the transaction process is in three parts. The first part is the initial due diligence and term sheet. And in this phase, the counterparties come together, they share information. PG&E is interested in TUD's, for example, financial capability of taking on the project and its interest in doing so. TUD is interested in costs and history of the project and a lot of technical details. And so both parties undertake due diligence, and they execute a term sheet that obligates them to negotiate exclusively with each other and to move forward towards a purchase and sale agreement. That part one is mostly completed. It probably took a bit more than 12 months, but we've executed the term sheet in December of 2019. I will note that the schedule that is before you here is perhaps a little bit ideal. We live in a strange age of COVID, and that has introduced all kinds of delays and uncertainties. You all know that TUD has been working, some of the staff have been working remotely. My understanding is that many of the PG&E staff that would normally work in San Francisco are also working remotely. It's very difficult to get meetings together, certainly less efficient to not have in-person meetings and so forth. And so, in my opinion, this entire transaction process has been considerably slowed by COVID, and that's likely to be the case through most of 2021 until we get this pandemic a little more under control and can go back to meeting in person. So just a sidebar on the asterisk on the schedule here. The part two of this transaction process is currently underway, and this would involve development of a purchase and sale agreement, or PSA. Just a couple of words about the purchase and sale agreement. This is a fairly complicated real estate transaction. If you think about it, there are facilities literally spread across miles of Tuolumne County. They involve not just real estate assets, but also physical facilities, the regulatory obligations, the transfer of various licenses and permits. And on top of all of that, a lot of these facilities are 100 years old or thereabouts. And believe me, a lot of things get lost in 100 years. And so it's a fairly challenging and complex process to simply bundle up the documentation on all of these assets and include it as attachments and exhibits to a purchase and sale agreement. The PSA has to cover not only things like price, but timing of transition, what obligations come with the facilities, which ones remain with PG&E, and so on and so forth. So this PSA is very complicated transaction, and it does take quite a few months and frankly, a considerable amount of effort by mostly PG&E in order to pull all of that information together and make sure it's right. As I mentioned earlier about the potential for raising revenues, TUD may undertake a Prop 218 process. Again, that needs a lot more public and interagency discussion. And then also in this phase, we will undertake additional due diligence as needed. So what I mean by that is TUD has spent the last year and a half or so working with PG&E, reviewing records, literally shadowing PG&E operations staff out on the project, and we're pretty comfortable that we know where the strong points and weak points of this project from a physical facility standpoint. But as we work through those 100 years of records and documents, it's for sure there will be other issues that come up, and we'll simply need to get that information, review it, work it out with PG&E, and make sure we understand everything we can about this project before taking it over. The third phase of this is after the purchase and sale agreement is completed. So what happens is the purchase and sale agreement is completed. It is a binding document, but it will have some conditions precedent. And so the TUD board and PG&E senior management would both sign this purchase and sale agreement, and then it would go to the PUC, Public Utilities Commission of California, and to FERC for approval. And if those approvals are granted, then the PSA goes into effect. If they're not granted, or if there's some changes demanded by those entities, then the PSA would not go into effect. And so there's a period of about 18 months when FERC and the PUC would review and approve these documents. And then there's a very extensive real estate closing period. I imagine most all of you have bought a house or other real estate property. Typically closing is 30 or 60 days. For an asset of this complexity, the closing period is probably more like 6 to 8 months. And there's an awful lot of things that happen during that final 6 to 8 months to get everything lined up from a legal standpoint. Also, in that final 6 to 8 months is when TUD would need to bulk up hiring, contracting with third parties, any additional training that hadn't already occurred, and then on a date certain, we would commence district operations of the facilities. So I actually covered a lot of this in the previous slides. So a couple of other things in closing activities, transfer of the various permits and licensings. CAISO, that's the California Independent System Operator. They operate the transmission and distribution grid in California. There are interconnection agreements that would need to be structured in TUD's name. TUD will acquire staff and equipment, hire as needed, and purchase whatever additional equipment it needs above and beyond what comes from PG&E. The real estate closing, which we talked about, SCADA and communication systems cut over, and then I assume there would be some board policies regarding operations, things like financial reserves and so forth. The current schedule that we have, as I mentioned, is probably a bit optimistic given COVID and the complexity of this. We had anticipated closing and operations by TUD as early as the early portion of 2023. I think realistically, we're probably looking at mid-23 and perhaps even later, just depending on how quickly everything moves. The point of the schedule isn't to have distinct milestones, but to recognize that we have before us probably at least two probably 2.5 and perhaps 3 years to sort through all of this. So there is a team of folks from TUD and outside consultants such as myself who have been working on this now for about 2 years. There's a team at PG&E that is 4 or 5 people. And as we proceed through this, the PG&E team will swell considerably. I would expect for them to have 10 or 12 people working on this when we get into the closing phases. And it'll take a lot of work and a lot of commitment by all of us, but we can get this all put together over the course of the next 2.5 to 3 years. Director Balin, that's all I have for today. So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Tom. I think I went away. Here we are. At least I'm not a cat. Okay, let me get myself.
As long as we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right, I'll just keep talking and keep pressing this little microphone button here. That was great, Tom. Thank you for unpacking that, especially the timeline. I know in the grocery store, I get comments like, you know, as if this has already happened. And so I think that this is really timely to go over the actual flow of events. All right, let's see. There we go. All right. So our next presentation is by our TUD's legal counsel, Jesse Barton. And as Tom mentioned, Jesse is indeed an expert in water rights law, as California water rights law. He keeps TUD's contract with PG&E in order. He knows that thing, I'm sure, by heart. That's probably on your nightstand, huh, Jesse? And he's just been an amazing resource for us. And so Jesse's going to be presenting another, if you will, opportunity to have a feather in our quill or diversify our water portfolio, have more than one basket of eggs, so to speak, with the Central Valley Project. And that might be the first time everybody's heard of that. So Jesse will explain what that is and what our opportunity is for countywide benefit. So thank you, Jesse, and welcome.
Thank you, President Balin. Corey, it looks like you unlocked me. Thank you. So bear with me while I set this up. And go to presenter view. Okay. Does everybody see the first slide?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, as Barbara mentioned, I'm Jesse Barton, TUD's General Counsel, and I'll be giving a short presentation on TUD's recent efforts to acquire a contract from the United States Bureau of Reclamation for water that is stored in New Melones Reservoir. Second slide here. You know, by way of background, for those of you who may not be familiar, the Central Valley Project, of which New Melones is a part, is a large federal project initiated in 1935 to better manage water supplies in California. The New Melones Project was originally authorized in the 1940s, and it entailed enlarging the existing Melones Dam and reservoir to store additional water during the winter, spring periods, during the high rainfall periods. The reservoir enlargement was not actually started until decades after it was planned, and it was eventually completed in 1979. As the project was being developed, most of the additional water that would be stored in New Melones was allocated to satisfy various environmental and regulatory obligations that the Bureau incurred as a result of the overarching Central Valley Project. but TUD's predecessor was named in the federal legislation that authorized New Melones as an exception and is therefore eligible to receive a contract for water out of New Melones. TUD over the past several decades has considered obtaining a contract several times, but has never executed a contract with the Bureau. TUD is now considering obtaining such a contract as a supplemental or supplemental emergency supply for Tuolumne County. At this time, we do not have a firm estimate of the amount of water being sought, as that number needs to be established through what is called a water needs assessment, which is an examination of you essentially have to prove up how much water is needed to obtain the contract from the Bureau, and that assessment is ongoing. The water needs assessment will consider as part of its evaluation the county general plan. And then once TUD identifies the amount of water that it seeks, TUD will inform the Bureau. And then that information will be used to establish what is called a basis of negotiation with the Bureau of Reclamation. Once the Bureau issues the basis of negotiation, that kind of sets the ground rules of the what is expected of the parties during the negotiation. They need to know certain things such as how much water, where it's going to be used, what it's going to be used for, and things of that sort. Once the basis of negotiation is established, it's the acronym is BOND for short. That will start a 2-year time limit during which TUD will have 2 years to complete the necessary environmental documentation, which would include compliance with both CEQA and NEPA, and then also finally execute that contract with the Bureau. The amount of water being sought will influence the overall costs to secure the contract and the depth of environmental analysis required, because as the larger the contract, the more downstream impacts there may be. Diversified water sources. The desire to obtain the contract from the Bureau at this time is part of TUD's efforts to diversify its water resources and improve reliability. You've already heard from Tom at the beginning of this meeting here, the first step in this effort, which will be to acquire PG&E's Phoenix system, as well as the Phoenix water rights, Pinecrest, and the Pinecrest water rights. And this second step being the Bureau contract, will give TUD access to a reservoir with a watershed that is roughly 9 times the size of the South Fork stand by itself. You can kind of see a layout here in the upper corner of the difference in watershed sizes between just the South Fork, and then when you combine the north and the middle with the south, and then downstream all the way to New Melones. It's a substantially larger watershed and can capture substantially more water for use. Access to the water. TUD will not have to build anything to utilize the water from New Melones. TUD already has a pump system in New Melones, and the ability to lift that water from New Melones up and into TUD's upper ditch systems, as well as various other connected ditch systems. Having this additional water could be used to offset a wide variety of TUD demands in other areas of the system. Although New Melones can hold up to 2.4 million acre feet of water, this will not guarantee 100% reliability. There will be times when water will not be available to pump at TUD systems. And this could be in situations where there's multiple year droughts, an extreme drought. And then there are also regulatory constraints imposed that may limit when and how much water can be pumped up from New Melones. This is a map of the system, and you can see up here in the upper left-hand corner the facilities involved in this contract. And this is the New Melones pump facility. It's down here in the upper reach of New Melones. And then from that point, it is pumped up into this pipe and ditch system where the water is then left. I apologize, I tried to make this as large as possible, but it's still, the smaller font is difficult to read. but this is Matlow Reservoir right here. And then it would be lifted from Matlow Reservoir up into this junction here. This is called the San Diego Divide right here. And then the water could be distributed by gravity from this point to the Matlow ditch, or south into the San Diego ditch, and then serve this area of Tuolumne County. And by providing that additional water, it could be used to provide additional water for supplemental uses. It could fight fires, additional water to fight fires in the area, and relieve water demands up here in the upper system. We would have, the TUD would still have its upper diversion up here by gravity on the South Fork stand, serving the larger portion of the area. But if something were to go wrong, water could be lifted and pumped into this system to provide sustainability and more reliability than we currently have. Estimated costs. These are the Bureau prices here. The water is relatively inexpensive at only between $45 and $70 per acre foot. You have to add the $10 per acre foot environmental restoration charge to both forms of water use, whether it's for ag or M&I. The ENR charge is added to both of those. For this, and then ultimately, although this is the Bureau price for the water, it will cost approximately $193 per acre foot to lift that water up from New Melones into the TUD ditch system. For this reason, water under this contract is not currently anticipated to be part of TUD's regular supply, because if TUD can run adequate water by gravity from the South Fork through the main Tuolumne Canal, there'd be little reason to incur the costs needed to lift the water from New Melones. As I mentioned, this is kind of a belts and suspenders types approach, so a backup supply. The objectives. Ultimately, TUD does not envision pumping water from New Melones every year. Instead, the water will be used when the San Francisco supplies are limited, which could be due to climate change. And climate change is expected to result in an earlier end of spill at Pinecrest. And if that were to occur, it may be necessary to pump water from New Melones earlier in the system. And by doing so, what that would do is the phrase is called backing water into Pinecrest. And so rather than drawing from Pinecrest supplies, TUD would draw from New Melones supplies and leave that storage into Pinecrest for future summer needs. Some of the other uses would include fire protection, fire prevention, ditch outages, emergencies, or if California were to impose more environmental constraints on TUD on its water use. Having the water available will give TUD better operational flexibility, because it will have two water sources from which to draw and not just one. As I mentioned, this could alleviate stresses during the ditch outage and during maintenance. And so the ditch outage could be a regular maintenance ditch outage which the district establishes every year. Every year it's got to turn off that ditch and do maintenance on it. But it also could be an emergency ditch outage where a tree were to fall on it, or unfortunately if it were to get burnt. So in those situations, if there was a need, TUD could, if it wanted, pump on a regular basis. But until a need is presented, the contract is expected as anticipated to be primarily used as a supplemental supply in times of need. TUD expects to finish its water needs assessment, notify U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, obtain its basis of negotiation, the bond, and then comply with NEPA and CEQA, execute and ultimately execute a contract with the Bureau of Reclamation over the next 2 or 3 years. And that, my presentation is much shorter than Tom's. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. That's the way it worked out. And I turn the microphone back over to Barbara at this time.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. That was a great overview. And again, this is not just about whether we have enough water today. This is about factoring in the very real possibility of hots, drier dries, and wetter wets, where we could actually have the whole year's rainfall come in 1 month. We don't know. And so with that, again, it gets back to me, when you factor in climate change in our future and the opportunity that you guys are presenting here, and that we're all, the fact that we're all in this together, when we go forward with our water needs assessment, and I think that was on one of your slides, this is why we're meeting today, is to take a look at our water needs, not just our housing stock, not just in a narrow bandwidth, but in everything that has beneficial uses according to California Water Code. That includes our recreation, obviously water for fire protection, water for agriculture. Do we, want to have water for future heritage tourism, let's say? And so there's a variety of resources and benefits that would be countywide. Water would attract people to live here. Water is part of our fabric of nature, and water is definitely a powerful force, not only in nature, but as a commodity also. So here, that's sort of the gist of our presentation. And with that, I would like to thank our presenters. And I think that gives us an idea of what we're looking at in our opportunity. And now open it up to all the boards, the circle of leaders that are here today, for questions or, discussion. And so I see Director Ringen's hand up, and Director Murphy also. But if you guys know how to raise your hand by going through Corey? No, Director Ringen says no. Okay, well, I will work with Corey. All right, for Corey, why don't we tag team on this, okay?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll write down names as I see them pop up. And so I'll call on people as I see them in line and ask them to unmute themselves. So we'll go ahead and start out with Lisa, then we'll move on to Ron, and then move on down the list after that. So we'll start off with Lisa.
Thank
or
you.
Director Murphy, I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, mine is a question about the FERC agreement. So if we pass on if we as Tuolumne County were to pass on the opportunity to acquire the water rights and infrastructure, and PG&E sells to another entity, and that entity chooses to do water only, so decommission Phoenix Power Plant, would they still be required to uphold the FERC agreement that we have with PG&E? Or since it would be water only, would it shift to being under the California State Water Resources Control Board instead, and that FERC agreement may or may not be honored?
I think that's a Tom and Jesse question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll take a first cut at that, and if I don't get all of the answer, then Jesse can help. So the FERC license isn't an agreement. It is a license to operate, and it is associated with the power generation components of the project. So if an entity, whether it was TUD or somebody else, no longer wanted to generate power, they could relinquish the FERC license. And FERC then goes through a process to decommission the project. And decommissioning is quite a bandwidth. So there's anything from abandon everything as is in place, simply remove the generators, to basically removing all the parts and pieces and restoring the site back to its natural condition. So decommissioning is this huge spectrum, and decommissioning is always a one-off process. So if somebody who had held the FERC license, wanted to no longer generate, they would go through a decommissioning process. over the course of 2 or 3 years with FERC and come up with an agreement on what that decommissioning would look like. If the owner of those facilities also wanted to continue to transport water, they could do so. There's a question on another project that I'm working on that if you relinquish the power generation, do you automatically relinquish the water rights that goes with that? And there's, that gets into a level of legal analysis that we haven't undertaken and would have a lot of complexities to it. But in theory, that if you could keep the water rights but shut off the generation, then yes, your primary regulator would be the State Water Resources Control Board and regulation through the water rights. So if I've answered most of your question, great. If not, any follow-up?
Yeah. So I guess what I was trying to get at is my understanding is the agreement that we have with PG&E for the water that we currently get is sort of protected by FERC. And I may be wrong on that, but I thought that was kind of who made sure that agreement stayed in place. And I'm wondering if somebody else comes in, if we pass on the opportunity to get the water rights and infrastructure, if another entity comes in, if PG&E sells to another entity, would we expect that entity would be required to keep the same agreement we've had with PG&E, that we continue to get that water supply for free?
Jesse?
Yes, thank you. I wasn't sure if you were going to field that one. To answer your question, Lisa, Director Murphy, the contract between TUD's predecessor, and PG&E, FERC is not a party to that contract, and neither is the California Public Utilities Commission. That contract was entered into for a variety of reasons in 1983, some of which were to prevent other parties being party to that contract, and that's why it's a two-way contract. If an outside entity were to acquire the system, the FERC license and the water rights for Phoenix, and they desired to abandon the Phoenix project, the water rights that Tom had on his slide would, in my opinion, still be valid to be retained. Power generation is only one of the uses, authorized uses of those water rights. Public service and domestic water supply are also uses, authorized uses for those water rights. So I think it would be conceivable that they could release the license and keep the rights. Does that answer your question directly, or you have a follow-up?
I guess the question is, how secure is, if this changes hands to another entity, how secure is, should we expect to continue getting the water for free?
The short answer is no.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, the easiest way for me to explain this is, let's pretend I don't represent TUD. Let's pretend I'm contacted by a third-party buyer of significant water rights, and they are bound to a contract that's over 30 years old, written in a different regulatory and legal climate, and they want to monetize those water rights. I don't think it would be very difficult for a water rights attorney to find a way to monetize those water rights. And the most likely purchaser of that water would be the entity that uses those water rights the most, and that is TUD. So if I were hired, that's what I would do. But I represent TUD, and I would like to prevent that from happening.
Excellent. Thank you. That answered the question. I appreciate it.
All right, next up is Director Regan.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I want to thank Tom Johnson and Jesse Barton for two excellent presentations. I think it's going to be very, very, both of them are very, very helpful for our community to understand what PUD is trying to do. And anyone that knows me knows that I've been involved in this water thing for many years. And I'm also a county resident for over 45 years, as well as coming here since the late 40s as a toddler. So I love this county, and water is a big part of it. So with that being said, Director Murphy kind of beat me to the punch on, I've got a couple things I want to talk about. The PG&E contract, which Jesse Barton and I have discussed a couple of times. Every time I read it, I get kind of ill. And what Director Murphy brought up is what my concern has been for years, that everybody wants to hang their hat on this water into perpetuity. There's just what Jesse Barton said. Any really good attorney, water attorney, will blow that thing out of the water. And so if we don't take this once in a lifetime, finally, chance to get our own water rights under our belt, which should have been done by Tuolumne County over a century ago, but wasn't. This is the time to get it done and to make sure for our residents, for our economy, for future development, and our livelihoods, we need to make this thing happen. Which brings me into my next thing. This is not a TUD, Tuolumne Utilities District deal. This is an entire Tuolumne County deal. Everyone needs to lock arms and move forward on this. TUD just happens to be the one entity that's able to maybe, hopefully, bring this thing to a conclusion for all of Tuolumne County. So, with that being said, for the PG&E acquisition and New Maloney's water rights, both of them, support and backing should be forthcoming as the entire county will benefit. And here's just a few of the groups that need to step up to the plate and give us support and help us figure out how this thing is going to get paid for. The Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors and County, the City of Sonora, Tuolumne County Chamber of Commerce, Tuolumne County Visitors Bureau, Tuolumne County Board of Realtors, Tuolumne County Business Council, Tuolumne County Building Industry, the Tuolumne County Farm Bureau, Tuolumne Band of Miwoks, and the Chicken Ranch Band of Miwoks. That's all I got to say for right now. Thanks.
Okay, next I'll be calling on Humphreys. Real quick down the line, I have Humphreys. Then next will be Jaron, Ryan, and then Director Boatwright. So go ahead, Humphreys. I went ahead and sent you an unmute. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. My name is Wilson Humphreys, or Will Humphreys, and I, along with Tom Weathers, a number of years ago, were successfully applied for a FERC permit for Pinecrest hydro power, and we received that. And we were in the midst of putting a 1 megawatt on Pinecrest Dam, Strawberry Dam to be more precise. We had approval from Stanislaus Forest. I did all the paperwork and the permitting. We were successful with the FERC permit, and I was successful also in acquiring from the Water Board in Sacramento the riparian water rights for Pinecrest. With that being said, I'm hopeful that we can work together, and I have all the engineering and all the documents, and along with Frank Helm and I, we did all the environmental assessment work, that I would share that with you folks, and hopefully make something positive happen from all of my and Tom's hard work. So with that being said, I'll leave it to questions and or talk to you individually later, but that's where I am with, and the reason I'm at this meeting.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, go ahead, Jaron.
Thank you. If it's all right, I'd like to defer to Chairman Campbell, just so he can be able to get the lead on that. I can ask mine after.
Okay.
Okay, well.
No, you're still.
Well, thanks. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we had some audio issues, but I think we've got it worked out. So good to see you all. And I just wanted to start out and just say, I think I can speak for the whole Board of Supervisors by saying thank you, President Balin and members of TUD Board for setting this up. And thank you, members of the City Council, for being here as well. I think it's a big priority for the Board of Supervisors to have better communication between our agencies. We all serve different constituencies, but all of us collectively serve Tuolumne County in total. So our interests, and I couldn't agree more, and this is just me speaking here, I couldn't agree more with the statements of Board Member Ringen. This is not just a TUD issue. This is an issue that affects every major public agency in Tuolumne County. And it's you took the words out of my mouth when I was going to say this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to truly right a wrong, a crime that was done against future generations of Tuolumne County residents. Surrendering these water rights has been has caused difficulties that have rippled through our county for a generation. So I'm speaking for myself. I'm in favor of righting that wrong if we have the opportunity. That being said, the main concern that I have is of course the costs of it, and I do believe that there will be unanticipated costs and difficulties in accomplishing this, and we need to be cognizant of that. And I'm sure this is a very sober group that we have, so I'm sure we are. But the element that we need to be very clear with the public that this will be a long, difficult, and potentially messy process, and we need to be cognizant of potential long-term liabilities for those costs. I guess my main point is that yes, it is the right thing to do. Yes, we can do it if we all work together, but it's going to be hard, and we need to be upfront about this is going to be a very long, difficult process. I'm going to look, since we're all on the same wave, we're all on the same audio system here. I'll look and see if any other board members have any questions or comments. I know Jaron wanted to get in there too, and he's on his own.
Yeah, but how do I speak? Where do I
You just speak with the microphones on the camera.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen Half here, 4th District Supervisor, but I'm speaking on behalf, I guess, of my own thoughts here, and as a past person in charge of Tuolumne Public Power for the whole county government, such as the city, the county, the schools, and of course TUD, special districts. So TUD is also involved in having the privilege of having a beneficial power rate. And this enters into, you know, the hydro and the generation. And I just wanted to make sure that our first preference water rights that have been secured in US legislation long ago are, you know, not tampered with, and I don't think they can be through this transaction, but also taken into consideration to make sure that TPPA can serve, if this goes through, the TPPA can still serve all of the new facilities that will be acquired through this contract, through this agreement. So I just want to make sure that those things are looked at and preserved to make this a beneficial deal for all of Tuolumne County. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? This is David Goldenberg, District 1. If you can hear me okay, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, similar concerns. I agree with the sentiments of Chairman Campbell. You know, looking at the overall acquisition costs, of course, is, you know, we don't know where that sits. The other concern that I have is on the potential maintenance and liability costs in taking on a power generation plant, the 2 dams, and all the regulatory things that go along with those dams. And you know, if there is a major problem with one of them, you know, where is the cost going to be to fix that? And you know, if TUD couldn't take that, then you know, I feel the onus is probably going to fall back on the county, and you know, so that's something to be concerned about. And I was just curious. I had one question on that 15 miles of the main Tuolumne Canal. How much of that was elevated and perhaps at risk? The same thing with other portions of the TUD system. You know, risk to, you know, trees falling on it or fire exposure, you know, what have you. So, I mean, that's kind of getting a little bit in the weeds, but I was just, you know, if we take that on, there could be a lot of costs. And overall, the concern would be where would the ratepayers, you know, be on this acquisition? That what kind of costs would there be, raises and rates for our users out there? Thank you.
Thank you. Before I turn that over to someone who can answer that, I think your question also was about maintenance of PG&E of the current system, how TUD would be doing that, and also the cost amortized on the ratepayer. I just wanted to add one little caveat here is in 01, I worked on rebuilding the Darby Flume, which is on the south facing side of the canyon over on the north fork of the Stanislaus. And FEMA covered 100% of that because the Utica Power Authority was a public utility. That's the advantage TUD has here as a public utility, being able to, once California is declared a disaster or our county, then we can apply for FEMA funds. I don't believe, and before I turn it over to either Jesse or Tom for the next part, I don't believe PG&E can claim FEMA money, can use FEMA money. And I think that's been some of the problem because they're not rebuilding once things have burned. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jesse and Tom.
Yeah, Jesse, I'll take a first stab. I think the questions I heard were around risk of operations, amount of canal versus flume, and then costs. And I'm going to try and answer those, perhaps not in specific order. First of all, PG&E has done a good job of maintaining these facilities. As I mentioned earlier, they've owned these facilities for 100 years, and they're still here, right? If PG&E was in and out, we don't care, we're not in it for the long run, they'd have been done and gone 70 years ago. PG&E is the largest owner and operator of hydroelectric facilities other than the federal government in the entire country. And they're pretty darn good at operating these sorts of facilities. And so overall, the facilities, while portions of them do show their age, they are certainly older, some of the equipment, and et cetera, but it is all well maintained. It is all up to current code compliance and standards. Secondly, with regards to costs, any prudent budget that the district develops, and I will tell you that we have developed a preliminary budget. Obviously, we don't own the facilities, so it hasn't come before the board for adoption. But the TUD should, in my opinion, adopt a budget that would have appropriate reserves, both emergency reserves and capital reserves, to operate and maintain this project with the intention of basically operating it in perpetuity. And so appropriate capital replacements and investments through time to keep these facilities in an ever new condition, maybe not new, but ever functional condition, whether that's for 10 years or for 50 years or however long the TUD might need to utilize these facilities. And so as we develop budgets and costs, we will have those recommended reserves included, and any sort of revenue stream for this project will, at least in my recommendation, will have all of those appropriate costs baked into them. Thirdly, President Balin was 100% correct. As a public entity, TUD would have access to things like FEMA money in the event of an emergency, and certainly that's very helpful. With regards to the amount of canal versus flume, I don't have the exact numbers at hand. I'd have to dig those out. I believe there's something like between 2 and 3 miles of flume total in the Tuolumne Main Canal. That's chopped up into lots of bits and pieces. I believe that Tuolumne Utilities District owns and operates quite a few more miles than that of flume across all of its other ditch and flume system. The TUD system is many times the length of this Tuolumne Main Canal that's being added on. Although Tuolumne Main is fairly large, TUD already operates way more miles of canal and flume than they will be adding with this acquisition. So I think I've covered those points. If not, please, any follow-up questions?
No, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it. Just looking at a broad sense, moving forward, the potential for those costs. But I like the idea of how you describe the planning. Thank you.
And I think if it's still okay with Supervisor Brandon, I think Supervisor Kirk had a question. It's I kind of feel like when you're at the grocery store and you think they just have one item, and so you let them go in front of you, and then they have a whole nother cart of groceries. If that's okay with you, Supervisor Brandon. Okay.
Cool. All right. First of all, thank you guys for putting this together. Tom and Jesse, your presentations. Tom, I think TUD's really fortunate to have you on board, just hearing some of your background. I think they're fortunate to have you guiding them through this process. To be honest with you guys, I was a little bit worried about today's meeting based on some of the past TUD board meetings that I watched. I wasn't sure where we would be with water rights. I know where I am, and I'm ecstatic because today it sounds like we're all on the same page. Supervisor Campbell said it really well. It really was a wrong that we need to make right for our citizens, and I think it's important for me. My perspective is either you guys, the county, is going to own it, or some third party is going to come in and own it. And when that is owned, someone's going to pay for the water. So either we're going to have more control and pay for it one way or another, or a third party is going to come in and own it, and we're still going to pay for that water one way or another. And I think Lisa Murphy, her question was the number one thing on my mind was when we lose a contract with PG&E, and if a third party acquires it, like Jesse said, we're going to end up paying for that water. So I think we're all on the same page. We want to support you guys. We want to make this wrong or right, and we want to own our own water. And I think it's important for the constituents as we go through this process to understand that one way or another, we're going to pay for this. And then, Ron Regan, I was writing down what you said. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I actually think I'll go a little bit above it. I think this is a once in the civilizations opportunity because several generations have lived in this county and haven't had water rights. And I think this is going to be a benchmark moving forward. With that being said, I would just say, Ron, when we ask for business support, when we ask for developers support, for Visitors Bureau, I think if we're going to be asking people for support, we have to be fair and consistent when we're talking about water and hooking up people and developers, because we're entering a new phase where we're all going to have, the entire community is going to have to be on board. And I think it's important that when people develop and people want to build out, we are hooking them up so that when we have these conversations moving forward, there's support from all aspects of the community. So I just want to make that, and as long as I'm a board member, you guys have my full support. Anything we can do to help, I just commit that to you guys, and look forward to hopefully seeing this thing be a success and benefit our community in the days to come. So thank you guys.
Okay, so if we go down the list, we'll call on Director Boatwright next, and then Director Kearns will be right after that.
I think Jaren had some comments too, didn't you, Jaren?
All right, go ahead, Jaren.
I'm good whenever, but probably group us all together. That way we kind of get the county initial stuff out of the way, if that's okay with you, Bruce. All right. I just wanted to say first that I wanted to thank all the partners here because, this is being new to the board, new to me to have a joint meeting with our fellow public agencies. And I think that's really inspiring. I don't think this happened very much before we entered onto the board. And so this is a new step for the county. I wanted to recognize our tribal partners. I wanted to recognize TUD in the city. Everyone being here, this is a great step. And the second is thanks to Chairwoman Balin and TUD for organizing this too, and putting all this together, as well as Jesse and Tom for presenting and giving us a lot of clarification on it. I really look forward to more collaboration on a lot of our shared issues. I think, as Director Ringen had mentioned, not only this, but I think many of these issues, we face them as a community and we rise and fall together. We have a lot of overlap, and I hope we continue these conversations into the future for this issue, but also beyond that. To me, the value of this is crystal clear, especially, given climate change, given the cyclical drought that we face, as well as housing and humanitarian needs and business needs. Water is the new gold, and selling the water rights for this county was perhaps the stupidest, most short-sighted decision ever made, up there with buying a gold mine. And I think this has the opportunity to potentially rectify that. And I think that echoes a lot of the sentiments from the county, is an eagerness to learn more about it and see what we can be able to do together. I think that this has the strong potential to make us more resilient, stronger as a county, be able to give us options into the future, which is very important. And also that taking no action on this will be a decision. And I have a couple of questions right after I give my little spiel. But to me, the main concerns, the cost and liability, is still kind of a muddy issue. I do have questions about what the impact will be to ratepayers, what the potential for revenue generation would be. And of course, we want to make sure that while we acquire these rights, acquiring these rights would be a good decision for the county, that we're able to maintain them, we're able to pay for them, and that we're not signing up for something that is unsustainable, which is equally important. So anyway, just to again echo board member Ron Ringen's comments. This is not the decision for any one body. We're all in this process together. I'm so happy to see us here talking about it, learning about it, and I hope we continue that. A couple of questions that I had, it seemed from the first slide, speaking about the various pieces that had already been sold, and that potentially, the Tuolumne, Maine, Lion, Strawberry, Phoenix may be sold piecemeal. What happens if we do not purchase this as a package? Will it be sold off inevitably? Will PG&E potentially maintain it? Will it have a bunch of different owners? I'd love to kind of hear what the alternatives would be.
Yeah, this is Tom. I'll take a stab at that. I don't know if we have anyone from PG&E on the line with us here today, Janet or Mike. If you're here and you want to tackle this, speak up. If not, I'm going to take a shot. All right. I didn't see that we had anyone from PG&E on the line. My understanding is PG&E's interest was primarily in divesting the Phoenix project, and that is a FERC licensed project. In all of the divestitures that I'm aware of, they have sold the FERC licensed project as a complete unit. So that would be Lyons and Tuolumne Main Canal, the Penstock and Phoenix Powerhouse. Those are the primary facilities that are included in the Phoenix project. When we were exploring alternatives with PG&E and sharing interests about what TUD was really looking for, one of the things that we emphasized on numerous occasions was we wanted all of the water rights. We wanted to have more rather than less control. We wanted to have more rather than less rights. And for those of you who are familiar with how the system operates, for most of the year, the Tuolumne Main Canal diverts water from the South Fork of the Stanislaus River. There are times of the year when the natural flow in the South Fork Stan, mostly in the summertime, is less, not only less than what is needed in the Tuolumne Main Canal for TUD supply, but it's less than the minimum flows that are required below Lyons Dam. And so where the water comes from throughout the course of the summer is Pinecrest Reservoir. There's a release of water from the end of spill season, which is anywhere from April through June or July, depending on how wet it is. Until Labor Day, there's a release of water from Pinecrest Reservoir that supplies all the water that goes into the Tuolumne Main Canal, plus minimum flows between Pinecrest and Tuolumne and Lyons Reservoir, and from Lyons Reservoir down to New Melones. So without Pinecrest Reservoir, you do not have a year-round water supply. And so in our discussions with PG&E, it was pretty clear that that is a very crucial part of the entire package, to have a complete top-to-bottom water supply system for TUD. That being said, if TUD did not purchase the Phoenix system, I'm pretty certain that PG&E would move to sell it or do something else with it. The Pinecrest project is currently part of Spring Gap Stan, the PG&E's much larger Spring Gap Stanislaus project. Since we are looking at that acquisition, PG&E has actually a lot of work to do to carve Pinecrest out as a separate license and transfer that along with Phoenix. If they were not doing this deal with TUD, I doubt that they would undertake carving Pinecrest out. And so I think that Pinecrest Strawberry would remain with Spring Gap Stan. The Phoenix project would be sold as a package. So that might have been a longer answer, but I thought it important to have some background on how the system works.
Yeah, I
follow-up question? Any follow-up question, or did I get most of it?
Yeah, one follow-up on that. So if Pinecrest is not included, my next question on that was, who would buy it if not TUD?
Yeah, I don't think, I believe that PG&E is frankly bending over a bit backwards to carve out and sell Pinecrest to TUD to offer a complete system. Mm-hmm. And I do not think that they would offer it for sale, but for a sale to TUD. So it would stay with the balance of their facilities, and they would just sell the Phoenix system.
Okay. One question also was a lot of times it's been brought up to me from the public has been the potential of not only generating revenue from power, but being able to sell water downstream. And that seems to me to be the hinge on whether this is able to pay for itself or even be potentially revenue generating or not. What's the potential for this to be able to, I guess, either sell water downstream or be able to generate power and sell it downstream?
Yeah, good question. There are several, let me say it this way. The Phoenix is a very flexible project. It's if TUD takes ownership of all of the assets, it would have 2 reservoirs plus a canal and ditch system that spans both the Stanislaus and the Tuolumne watersheds, at least in the upper reaches. Some of the water from the Phoenix project currently makes its way into the Tuolumne River. As during winter and spill conditions, when the rivers are flowing high, Lyons is spilling, Pinecrest is spilling, PG&E has historically pushed as much water as possible through the Phoenix project for generation. That water then goes to Phoenix Lake, and then ultimately whatever isn't used for supply makes its way down into the Tuolumne River. That is a benefit to the Tuolumne River and to the users on that side. Whether that could be monetized in some way is unknown. That's certainly something that should be looked at. But PG&E, for a variety of strategic reasons, has never sought to optimize or monetize the water deliveries that they do. And Tuolumne County is not unique in receiving water from PG&E projects. There's probably a dozen PG&E projects up and down the west slope of the Sierra, plus a couple in the foothill range that currently provide water under contract. All of those contracts are either for free water, air quotes around free, or at below market rates. And PG&E has never sought to, impose any sort of market pricing on water, nor have they sought to sell or monetize excess water from their projects. And so as TUD investigates this, there will be a number of opportunities to try and optimize operations and monetize benefits of this project, either through dispersed benefits or more specific benefits to close the revenue gap.
All right. And I'd love, I think, just in the future, and I know this is very early on, to hear kind of what's the worst case if we don't do anything and what's the best case scenario for this, and it's a range of kind of options there. And I promise, last question, this is kind of relevant in the news recently, was the Orville Dam a little whiles back. Buying, as you mentioned, a century-old, some aging water infrastructure, while we can't predict the fail rate of any individual piece too accurately, what is protecting us from some kind of catastrophic failure of that related to either state or federal aid? What risk are we taking on with something like that? I know that's an easy question to close out with, so.
Okay. Well, it's actually, we could have a whole separate 2-hour discussion around dam safety and so forth. But both FERC and Division of Safety of Dams of the state of California take dam safety very, very seriously. The burdens on a dam owner in terms of monitoring, reporting, studying, and investigating their dams is fairly steep. It's a substantial portion of operating costs of these facilities. For example, FERC requires every 5 years an independent consultant to do a very detailed analysis of the dam, including the past 30 years of history, anything that's happened in the last 5 years, consider all relevant current and new safety regulations and so on and so forth. And both of these dams are in full compliance with all safety regulations on a state and federal basis. I'm not an expert in dam safety, but these facilities are up to snuff. Yes, they are old, but these facilities were built with, they weren't built to have a 10-year useful life. They were built to have hundreds of years of useful life. And as best we can ascertain and based on the records, they are in good condition and safe.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom.
Barbara, if it's all right, I could answer a little bit of, I think Jaren's question was a little bit broader. Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. Jaren, Supervisor Brandon, you had indicated the best and worst case scenario, and I took it a different way than Tom did. And I'll answer it the way I understood it. Let's take the best case. Best case is TUD acquires this system and is able to optimize, run the system incredibly well, reduce costs, and distribute the benefits on a very small level to all of those who benefit from having their own water rights. That would be the best case. TUD would be in charge of the water and control of the water destiny of the county as a public agency. The worst case you hinted at earlier, or maybe it was one of the other supervisors, where Tom pointed out that the 1983, the district receives water from two different sources. One is direct diversion through the Phoenix Project water rights from the South Fork. Those rights are tied up in the Phoenix Project. However, during the summer, TUD frequently drafts water from Pinecrest, which is in the Spring Gap Project. If PG&E were to just sell, and the 1983 contract addresses both sources. If PG&E were to sell just the Phoenix system, where does that leave that 1983 contract? Split in half. How are they going to accommodate that? It's going to be a rewritten contract, and I wouldn't want to see how that contract's rewritten. That's worst case. Hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, the list is getting long, so we will go ahead and address as we can. We'll go with TUD board members and then city council. So next up is Director Boatwright.
Oh, good afternoon. Are we in afternoon? Almost afternoon. Let me start by thanking the public leadership for the general support and understanding of this opportunity that we are embarking on, and also the public that has come to the meeting for their understanding of the opportunity, and I hope to have their support moving forward. And also thank you to Tom and Jesse for the presentations. Jesse, if you would listen to my questions so that I'm, won't be breaching anything that might be considered confidential.
It might be too late by the time you say it, David.
What will the relationship between PG&E and the new owner of the system look like for water used at the Spring Gap power generation facility?
Tom, I believe that is still subject to a confidentiality agreement, how that would look.
Yes.
All right.
I'm sorry, Director Boatwright.
Question. Thank you.
That's locked up. That's still subject to negotiation. We aren't hiding it, but that's subject to negotiation. And even if I were to say something, it may change.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Next up, Director Kearns.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. And I want to also thank everybody who's taken part of this rather large meeting. And as Director Ringen and several others have said, this is much bigger than TUD. This is This is not only everyone who is representing the various entities on this call, but future generations of Tuolumne County from here in perpetuity. Since I've raised my hand, a lot of my points have been already covered, but I do want to put my own little twist on a few of them. The first one is probably one of the biggest things that people have asked me out and about is, why does TUD want to take this on? And why did they start this conversation? And as Director Ringen pointed out earlier, PG&E started this conversation. So I hope all of you and those of you that are listening at home understand that PG&E is going to divest themselves of these assets, and so that's where the conversation began. Also, that 1983 contract, everybody loves to talk about the free water, and it's been a wonderful contract. It's been a great relationship between TUD and the entities that preceded us, and PG&E. It's been a good partnership, and it's worked wonderful. But as we all know, agreements can get very perilous when you have members of the original agreement leave and have new members step in and step into those shoes. That's when trouble, if trouble's going to start, that's when it usually starts. And those comments by Jesse Barton earlier about monetizing, that scares the heck out of me. And I hope it scares the heck out of all of you as well. Because no matter what we finally agree to with PG&E on what this system may cost to operate or to take care of into the future, we're going to pay for it. Our ratepayers are going to pay for it, whether we own it or we don't. And I think it is imperative for all the reasons that have been spoke about here earlier, that we get this deal done, that all of us lock arms, as Director Ringen said, and march forward in lockstep to get this thing done, because our future generations depend on it. And I'll reserve comment till later. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up I have Mark Plummer.
Thank you. First, I'd like to reiterate the comments by almost all the prior speakers about how important this is to us and how it seems absolutely essential that we press forward with it. But I start thinking of the nuts and bolts of the negotiations. And so my first thought is that we have a really awful negotiating position. Seems like we're desperate for it. And while we were approached with it, they want to sell it, that we almost have to pay any price that is required. So one of my questions is, if we can't reach what we think is a fair price, is there any option for arbitration or anything like that? Or are we just over a barrel? So that's the first question. Then the second question would be, if it's never going to be as good as free, obviously, but our ratepayers already feel that our water is really expensive. I would love to hear some of the board members address the possibility of selling water downstream or amortizing it over a long enough period of time that it is a bearable cost, because that's where most of our ratepayers, including myself, feel that our water is already really expensive. So, thank you.
I could take a shot at the fair price question, and as you might suspect, I'm going to say this is all shrouded in confidentiality, so I really can't say too much. But we have had discussions around price. One of the things that PG&E likes to do in the term sheets is to make sure that we're all really talking from the same place. So if there were complete disagreements on something like as fundamental as price, that we wouldn't proceed to a purchase and sale agreement, because as I've mentioned, it's a lot of time and effort both for TUD staff and for PG&E staff. And so I can tell you that we have had preliminary discussions on price, and I do not believe that arbitration or anything like that will be necessary. I believe that there will be a good and fair outcome of this that will not be disadvantageous to TUD.
And then if I could just have one follow-up, obviously, any rate hikes to the users, end users, is something that can't be discussed without even knowing a price and some of the costs and other things. At what point in the future will that be available to the public? Because that is the biggest question that most people have.
Yeah, I would defer that to President Balin or perhaps Ed Pattison to talk a little bit about the schedule for working out the revenues side of things. We are, as I believe I mentioned earlier, looking at all sorts of optimization and monetization options. I think there are quite a few options, and it will come down to the board and TUD and other leaders around the county to decide which of those options to pursue. So I am hopeful that we can, from a technical and accounting level, be able to share those options with board members in the not too distant future, and then have them give guidance to us in terms of what to pursue and when.
Very much. Then the last item would be that, I mean, I understand that water is incredibly complex. I've attended a few trainings where it was so far over my head with the complexity that most people don't understand that. But the other things that the public is really pushing for, sometimes it's believed that we have an anti-growth position, and it sounds to me like in this planning for the future that it's really taking a pro-growth approach. If that's the case, I'd sure like to hear more affirmation of that. Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, no response after that. Next will be Ann Segerstrom.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to say thank you to the whole Tuolumne Utilities District team for putting together this presentation and clarifying, so many aspects of what lays before us in terms of having a proprietary water system here in the county. And I've known for a long time that our county system is precarious and that we do need, deeply entrenched water rights of our own. So I want to throw my full support behind your efforts. And I know there will be a long, long road of more meetings and questions and doubts, but hopefully we can work through it. I also, strongly endorse educating the public as widely and as completely as possible, because you are going to get, as all the TUD members are talking, questions about water availability and rate hikes and this, that, and the other thing. And water is such a precious commodity here in California. I think having our own water rights access is terribly important. So anyway, I want to thank you again. And that is my City of Sonora 2 cents. Thank you very much.
Okay, next is Colette Such.
Hi, thanks for letting us speak. There's not a whole lot else for me to say. Certainly, I think that we should have water rights. It's crazy that we don't own the rights to our water. But I'm curious to hear what our tribal representatives have to say about this, and also I'm curious to hear John Buckley's position, because I think it's different. At this point, I don't really have much else to add. Just want to thank you for putting this presentation together. I would encourage everyone on this meeting today to actually participate in TUD board meetings. They're actually very interesting, and there's a lot of good information that comes out of them always. So that's it for me. Thanks so much.
All right, next will be CRDD.
Thanks. So Stephanie Seuss with the Chicken Ranch Tribe. Okay, so what's our opinion? I just want to go back in a different direction. First, thank you, Barbara, for putting this on. Jesse, Tom. This has been a long time in coming. I was back in, I can't even think when it was the last time that the county sat down with TUD and the Board of Supervisors chambers to have this discussion. And it was years ago, and not much was picked up after that. From the Chicken Ranch Tribe's perspective, I want to go back to 2014, 2015. And that's when we were kind of brought into the issue of the county was going to run out of water in 88 days, right? And what are we going to do about it? And the tribe negotiated a 3-party contract with a downstream partner to make sure there was water available. And the system, the way it was done back then, was water was purchased by the tribe at the time. As far as, just so you know, water at the time I think was going for over $3,200 an acre foot on the open market. That's not what we paid for it. They were very generous. We paid for what we used, and what we didn't use was no problem, which is a very unusual situation in purchasing water in the state. Since that time, the tribe has been trying to figure out how to operate under drought conditions, right? Looked at modeling under on the Stanislaus. It's a bureau operated facility, and yet it's also overseen by the state of California, where you're looking at phase 1 of the water quality control plan, where you can comply. They're looking at 40% more unimpaired flows going down the river, which means if there are no dams, how much more water would be going down the river? Last week's TUD meeting, I respectfully disagree with the thought of the reservoirs will always fill and spill. That I think kind of is naive going forward. And you have to look again at where your facilities are, at the levels of where the water is, again, under drought conditions, and going forward, how many consecutive years of drought could you possibly be dealing with? So, Director Ringen, you know, we're here, but it's not as easy as, you know, I don't know what everyone is expecting, right? It's not just a matter of cutting checks. It may be looking at capital improvement projects, ability to store more water below Lyons, right? Connecting, making more of those connections. Pulling water out of Maloney's, where the pumps are now, doesn't necessarily mean it gets to Jamestown without some significant infrastructure to be put in place, right? In 2015, most of the county was under 35% cutbacks. Twain Hart went as far as 50%. So when you're looking again at new construction, new development, which we need, it kind of comes with that caveat of you can have it, but just be aware there may be a regulatory drought, there may be a climate change drought, and I hate using that word because that sure separates the room if you use climate change, and there may be a system failure drought, right? So I think, again, looking at PG&E acquisitions, looking at CBP contracts, looking at water rights, and from a tribal perspective, going back, it's always this thing about, are you buying paper water or are you buying wet water? What is your end goal? And the end goal should be to have wet water somehow. And I commend you guys, and we've sat down and talked about this, but this is not easy. This is not easy work. And I so appreciate you bringing in the county, because this plays heavily into the general plan and how the environmentals go going forward, right? Are these areas for growth? And the last thing I'll say, hopefully, is the issue as far as going back to this drought again of 2015. When everyone was cut off or those flows were reduced, who got hit the hardest? It was the ag community, especially here in Jamestown. And David Brobright was our guy, right? And they were running schedules, trying to figure out how to get that quartz reservoir to figure out the lower system, the upper system of how to move that water, and we went from, I don't know, a couple days a week to maybe once a week. If going forward, Tuolumne County wants to have a viable ag community based on raw water or treated water or reclaimed water, right? Then we have to be aware that when you go into 30, 50% conservation, that water is not there for reclaimed use as far as ag goes. Okay, so this is a huge conversation. And again, water's not cheap. Moving it is not cheap from a power perspective. And Kathleen, just so you know, we've done some numbers with TIPA, we've done them with WAPA. I don't see a problem as far as getting the power where you're gonna run out, right? It's still there, the numbers are okay. So we'll do what we can, but this is not just writing a check. This is a huge community endeavor, and I think the more people that are aware and understand this, it's the easier. I don't even know if the word is easier. Education is good, right? That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Okay. Director Rain, did I see your hand come up before we start calling on public comment?
Director Ringen, did you have a comment, Director Ringen?
Yeah, I did, but I'm going to reserve it for right now. Stephanie Seuss brought up some points from the past, and well, I'll just say this much, that I'll call it a sweetheart deal, that the tribe put together for the community and TUD had a very unfortunate result. And at the time that they were putting that together, TUD was renovating the Matelow Reservoir. They were enlarging it and getting the silt buildup that had diminished the size of it. And the Matelow Reservoir is what feeds water to one of the biggest, if not the biggest, water treatment plants that TUD has, and that's the Columbia Water Treatment Plant. So the way the system works, and Tom Johnson went over this, the pumps that are in New Maloney's make two lifts. They make one lift out of New Maloney's up to a tank behind the pump station, which then pumps the water up to what they call the Columbia Divide. At the Columbia Divide, water's coming down from Big Hill by gravity, but also if you were to pump the water up from New Maloney's, it goes into that same concrete container, and the water is directed either at the same time or one way or the other, either to the Matelow Reservoir, or it goes to an inverted siphon that goes to Columbia College and on out down those ditches. Like I said, it can go either way or both ways at the same time. What happened, which was terribly unfortunate, is at the end of when they got the Matelow Reservoir resurrected or restored, let me put it that way, that's better. They immediately, Tom Seshu was the general manager at that time, he immediately turned on the pumps because they wanted to fill that reservoir with that water that the tribe had put together. What happened was it turned that freshly refurbished reservoir totally chocolate brown. The pumps, because the water level in New Maloney's by that time had gone so low from the drought, the pumps were almost sucking mud. So that's what ended it right then and there. And it was very, very unfortunate because it would have been a very, very nice deal to have kept ongoing. But that's what happened. I know, I was there, I witnessed it. So that's all I got to say on that.
Corey, I wanted to add just one thing before we open it up to the public, and it gets back to Mark Plummer's concern and also to Chicken Ranch. This is a huge undertaking. It's been tried even before there was TUD. It's been tried, I think, even before there was, TCWD or maybe when water was still part of the county. TUD may not be here forever. Okay, we may morph into, a community services district. I don't know. We could morph back into the county. I don't know. This is a big, epic look at water for our county, and to diversify not just our water portfolio, but our revenue sources. And typically, most mountain counties have water and sewer, okay, plus hydro or water power, plus recreation. Okay, they have about 4 revenue sources. Some have even more, taking in septage and other forms of revenue. We only have 2. And so this question is started with the county before even TUD was even, thought. It was our opportunity to own water rights. The stuff we can do, and Stephanie, you talked about this, it's not just for development. It is for local control of our food, our agriculture, our tourism, our recreation, and not-for-profit hydro abilities. We don't have to make a profit on it like PG&E. And so I do believe, just like TUD, we take our ratepayer water, we put out a fire, on someone who's not in the TUD system, we have a responsibility, we have a mandate to provide fire flow to everybody. And so it is good that we're all talking, because it's really clear fire knows no boundaries, and our water should be able to nourish our whole community and not have and have nots. And so, you know, as we move into the nuts and bolts of paying for this, I want all of us to think about, and I know Stephanie, the Chicken Ranch, has done a really good job about this, is looking at our needs assessment. What do we want to do with our water? We haven't really thought about that before in terms of local control, homeland security, that kind of thing. What do we want to see our water do? So with that, I'll get off my soapbox. And I really appreciate your comments, and same to you, Mark. I appreciate your comments too, and Colette also. So with that, Corey.
Okay, next up, we'll go ahead and take it to public. Next up is Gary Sipperly.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to add my thanks to TUD and the entities that they invited to participate in this. I appreciate that. Two questions for either Tom or help me, Jesse. First of all, as I understand it, TUD's mandate under the state special district law is for just water and sewer. If they were to take over the power generation, would that require a vote of the public in addition to any vote to take on the properties? And the second question is, if we take over Pinecrest, what would any kind of negotiating rights entail with the Pinecrest permittees? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Sipperly. I'll take that first question. TUD is organized, as you noted, under the Water Code. It's a county water district. And under the county water district law, power generation is an authorized power, I didn't want to use the word power again since it's redundant, but it is an authorized use of the county water district law. So TUD would not have to go to the public to obtain a vote to acquire and to operate and maintain the Phoenix facility. It's already in the statute. And then the second question, Mr. Sipperly, I wrote down the first one. I didn't write down your second question. Do you mind repeating it?
Sure. Pinecrest permittees have taken issue with the county when we've tried to get water from Pinecrest in the past. What kind of negotiating rights would they have if we were to take over ownership of Pinecrest?
If TUD were to take over ownership of Pinecrest?
Correct.
I believe the Pinecrest permittees would be in the same position they are right now. I don't envision the acquisition of that area changing their legal standing. They're permittees from the United States Forest Service. So I wouldn't envision that relationship changing. Not off the top of my head, no.
Thank you.
Okay, next up will be John Maciel, and then after that will be John Buckley.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'd like to thank the board for setting this up. I think it's been a long time coming, and it's nice to see all the stakeholders here interested in this topic. I have two questions, more of clarity. My understanding of the contract with PG&E, that that TUD is only committed to 10,000 acre feet of water. Everything else beyond that, we have to pay fair. They're supposedly supposed to pay fair market value for the water. Now, it's been my understanding that PG&E and TUD have worked out an arrangement where there's actually haven't been any money exchange. but the contract specifies they're only entitled to 10,000 acre feet of water, which is less than half of the volume of water available within the reservoirs. I don't know if that's still accurate or not, Jesse, but that's my understanding. The second question is, at the end of spill, when the TUD system only works off of the Lyons Reservoir, which has less than 4,800 acre feet of water for that summer period of 3 months. But also during that time, there is also 50% of the water is used for irrigation also. So there's a high demand of water for that 3 months during that time. So that whole contract issue of access to water really is the summer months, and that's a big deal. So my question is, if TUD doesn't control those water rights, then are we still going to be restricted to potentially to 10,000 acre feet of water? And how do you deal with the other need? Thank you.
Yeah, John, the 1983 contract has, over the past several decades, it hasn't been amended, but the parties have reached a variety of understandings of how much water is going to be available during a particular year. And I do not recall a hard number of only 10,000 acre feet. It depends upon a number of factors. But if that contract were to be acquired by somebody else, it's very likely that those contract provisions would be reinterpreted. And that is something that I'm concerned with. I don't see it, I'd prefer not to, that contract, it's complex, and it doesn't, and I don't mean to diminish your question and say, it's TUD's allocation is A, B, and C. It isn't like that. It's complex. It depends on their power needs. It depends on what they're going to run over the spring gap. It depends on the water, the snow survey. There's a variety of factors that go into what's available to TUD, and the relationship has been, as was noted by Director Kearns, the relationship has been very productive and equitable. But sometimes good things come to an end, and receiving free water forever, I think, in my opinion, is no longer an option. And then as I get, I always write down the first question, and then I start to answer it, and I miss the second question. John, do you mind?
No problem. Thank you. And it wasn't almost not a question, but more for clarity. During the end of spill, which goes through the summer focus, at that point, TUD has to live off of Lyons Reservoir for the 3 months. And that is also the main time, and Dave may know, that the irrigation basically picks up half the water for the whole year through those 3 months. So that becomes a different issue. And if we did have another drought, and if we don't have access, that end of spill is a major problem for water access for the summer months. Is that still true?
Yes. End of spill is the most critical date in water supply. Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, now we have John Buckley, and then Chris will be after that.
John Buckley, CSERC. Like a lot of the discussions that have been made today, the previous one was not accurate. There's more water flow that's being released as minimum flows from Pinecrest that come down to Lyons throughout the summer that is required for minimum flow below Lyons. That's additional water that becomes water supply for TUD. Plus, again, there's the ability for TUD to call for water as long as the Pinecrest lake level is met at the end of Labor Day. So it's much more complex than some of the simplifications shared. And that's the challenge. So far in this, it's been a very one-sided presentation of reasons why water rights and local control can be a solution to Tuolumne County. But it is really sad for me to, before there's been a full discussion on both sides, to see county supervisors, other politicians and board members here endorsing the acquisition of PG&E's facilities without even a clear understanding of many of the mitigations or requirements or costs that would be there. Some have criticized the fact that we're getting free water. TUD gets free water year after year based on the contract and also the ability to purchase excess above the already free water in some years that has, I believe, only resulted in a small payment. In all the years that PG&E's provided water, I believe TUD has only purchased water once at a relatively small cost. So ratepayers, the people that most of you are representing, if you're board members, are the people who need to have the lowest cost for the water. And every year PG&E pays for the maintenance of the dams, the main canal, the infrastructure, the millions of dollars in FERC relicensing costs and all these other costs. But Barb and others have said, but we need to be able to get more water because we need more water. Well, having water rights or taking over the PG&E system doesn't provide an additional drop of water in the South Fork Stanislaus, whether it's climate change or not. We already have TUD's ability to take as much water as it wants from PG&E with small amounts of purchases in some years, free in all the other years. It's already available. And it is total speculation that PG&E is going to sell a money-losing Phoenix project to some entity that will lose money on it. And that once that has purchased that they're then going to come up with some way to get around a clear legal contract that's on file with the State Water Board and with the FERC, both of which are prioritizing ensuring protection for water for local communities. So the whole fear that somehow the free water contract, which is legally binding, is not going to be there is total speculation. Sounds good if you want to promote acquiring facilities, but it's total speculation, especially because the Phoenix project's a money-losing project that PG&E is stuck with, but is continuing to operate. And here's the key things that I would want to get to. First, the amount of cost for this, if I won't go into the details, but if you look in the FERC relicensing documents to see what the net value of the net book value of the facilities are, not counting Pinecrest, and you look at the operational cost and others, TUD would be spending millions of dollars of ratepayers' money to get water that's already free. That is really the bottom line. But even more, TUD will have to expand staff, hire staff for positions they've never had before, not just power generation and recreation, but for doing a lot of these contractual things have to do with FERC obligations. And all of these costs will be added to the needed cost to do what TUD already has on its plate, an inefficient ditch system that loses to some degree an amount of water that doesn't need to be lost in the ditch system. We can still have the ditch system, but not lose 10, 15, 20%. And TUD board members fully know that the piping underneath Sonora and Jamestown and other places is up to a century old and is leaking. And by not losing so much water in those areas, there's a significant amount of water that can go for development or other purposes. So I just close by saying a lot of these people today who are speaking so strongly in favor of acquiring many, many millions of dollars acquisition for a system that already provides water for free are not the ones who are going to be paying for it. It will be ratepayers. It will be the individuals and families in Tuolumne County who are already paying more for water than is desired, but will be stuck with this because people will now be able to say, we've met our destiny, we have water rights and everything. The water rights are meaningless because we already have access to all the water in the South Fork Stanislaus. And there's a lot of other information, but I want to stay within my 5 minutes so that I can be fair to others who want to speak. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, I'll be calling on Chris. I just want to double check real quick. I see that I'm going to do the last numbers. There's a phone with the last numbers of 417 unmuted themselves. Is that because you would like to ask a question shortly?
Yes, I would.
Okay, I have you on the list, so I'll be calling on you here in just a moment. Next up will be Chris, and then actually 417 will be after that.
Hi, this is Chris Barsanti, and I have a short question and a question with a short answer and then one with possibly a longer answer. It was stated that some of the Phoenix water makes its way eventually into the Tuolumne River system. And I don't know how that happens. Can somebody tell me how that happens?
Yeah, the water from Lions Dam goes through the Tuolumne Main Canal and then through the Phoenix Powerhouse and into Phoenix Lake. And from Phoenix Lake, any water that goes out of the lake, either from inflow to Phoenix Lake or from the powerhouse, goes down Sullivan Creek, which is a tributary to Lake Don Pedro.
Okay, thank you. Sullivan Creek. Okay, great. My other question is the water from New Maloney's that can be pumped out, is the location is such that during a severe drought year or multiple drought years, as Ron said, then we're pumping mud. What is the feasibility, and has that been looked into at all? What the feasibility of putting in some kind of pump system lower down the reservoir, within the bounds of Tuolumne County, of course, but so that when the water level at New Maloney's is low, as it can be, in the 90s, it went all the way to Robinson's Ferry. It can be acquired from lower down in the reservoir. Is that a possibility that has been investigated? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question, Chris. That question has two answers. The first is your question was limited to physical availability of the water. The water was not physically available at the pump station during the extended drought. And while that is true, it's also true that the water was not available legally. Once New Maloney's hits a certain level, the water is not going to be legally available, even though it may be physically available. And the reason for that is the Bureau of Reclamation uses the New Maloney's reservoir to meet water quality standards in the Delta. And so they must release, first of all, the San Joaquin River, and then ultimately the Delta. And so you have to satisfy both of those in order to pump water. It has to be physically available and legally available. And then the second answer to your question is yes, it has been discussed. If water is legally available but not physically available, how might TUD acquire that water and lift it up into its system? And we have had those discussions. However, at this time, what we would like to do is obtain the contract. We don't want to spend the money on the investigation of various efforts. We are aware of, I am personally aware of probably 3 different ways to make that water physically available as long as it's legally available. But at this point, it's not necessary to go to spend that money when we don't even have a legal contract to pump that water. So if we can obtain the contract first, then we'll take a look at making that water physically available whenever it is possible. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, just to clarify, would that be a contract with Bureau of Rec, or who would that contract be with? Okay.
Yep, Bureau of Rec.
I thought when they put New Maloney's in, we were supposed to, as the county of origin, we were supposed to have certain water rights to the extra water that was being impounded. And so far as I know, we haven't gotten much out of that.
That you are correct. Oh, well, The first half is correct. That is in the federal legislation. The federal authorizing legislation for New Melones provides a carve out for Tuolumne County as a county of origin as a priority in-basin user. There's only one other entity, and I think it's a veteran cemetery in that legislation. So Tuolumne County is identified as a priority in-basin user. It simply hasn't acquired a contract. That legislation is still valid. It's been around for decades. And now we're taking a look at taking advantage of that, of the availability and TUD's priority status under that legislation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next up we have 417, and after that we'll be calling on Tom Trott and then Sean Crook.
Yeah, hi, my name's David. I've been a member of this community for about 50 years. My questions come, I'm a little privy to some information, but first I want to applaud Mr. Buckley for being transparent, open, and honest with the members of this community on what this acquisition actually means. You know, we're looking at acquiring assets as a county that cost an absolute fortune. And it's not just the normal day-to-day operation of these facilities, the regulatory requirements, the liabilities, the recreation, the Forest Service, BLM, all of that stuff has money attached to it. We're talking about acquiring something that is going to absolutely buckle the ratepayer, whether it's in taxes and or in actual rates itself. How do you guys plan on paying for that, and how would you pass that on to the ratepayer when we are already getting this for free? And are there options out there that you propose to PG&E, like maybe maintenance funding for some of the work they're doing? I've heard that just a week-long outage costs them almost $1 million to get the work done that needs to be done to maintain these facilities. Not to mention DSOD, which is a group that's gotten quite the headway recently with Oroville and some of those dams that failed back east, are looking at major repairs on some of these facilities annually. How is TUD or this county or any entity of the city or whatever it might be planning on paying for that?
Barbara, are you still with us?
I'm still here. I have a very irate university student that needed a Zoom exam. So I'm now been banished to my car here. That's the casualty of Zoom competition. If Ed wants to take this,
I can, or whatever.
Or Jesse, you want to take this? That's why we're in negotiations, just to actually look at and assess these assets, see what their shelf life is, and see what the 4E conditions. I mean, I've worked on those for Pinecrest, and the caller's absolutely right. There are a lot of costs that we are now flushing out so that we can be as transparent as possible. And Jesse, do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay.
Of course. Yeah, an issue that we want to be careful of here is backwards looking versus forward looking. Yes, the contract, the 1983 contract was a wonderful deal. It provides free water. That's in the past. What we are confronted with now is a new paradigm. And that paradigm is PG&E has made no secret that it will divest itself of the Phoenix system. They will no longer own it. So then the question becomes, who do you want to own that facility? Do you want it to be owned by a for-profit entity where they will undertake the O&M and they will comply with DSOD and add a profit margin on all of that? Or would you prefer that a public agency perform the work at cost? That's what it boils down to from my perspective.
Mr. Barton, if I may.
Please.
If it's such a money-losing project, and what group in their right mind would acquire that other than TUD and actually turn a profit? If it's losing money for Group A, why would it make money for Group B? Aside from the speculation that we put forward with selling water to Don Pedro and or whatever Valley entities, how are you going to turn a profit or even be at, I would say, zero for this project if someone else can't?
Yeah, so I am a water rights lawyer, and every so often, it usually happens during drought periods, I get calls from speculators asking me for my input or my advice, or asking to hire me about, and what they want to do is they want to acquire water rights and sell them at a profit. They want to make money off the drought, because as some people have mentioned, during droughts, the water price per acre foot can exceed $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 per acre foot. And most of those third-party entities are from outside this state, and they are aware. You don't have to live in California to know that California has a water distribution or is highly dependent on rainfall. It has a large population. The Central Valley Project was adopted as a way to move water from the water-rich areas to the water-poor areas. And it depends upon an infrastructure to move that water around. And when that infrastructure breaks down, or when Mother Nature breaks down and the year is dry, the water prices skyrocket, and you get speculators in there willing to acquire water rights and to sell them at a profit. And that happens every drought year for me. I feel, and so for me, from my perspective, it is not a leap to think that some third-party entity will come in, buy this water, very old water rights, very, very valuable water rights, and monetize them. It's not a leap in.
So to me, then, instead of acquiring this monstrosity of an asset, it would make sense that we would try to move forward as a community in purchasing the water rights, not the assets, and maybe even providing, I don't know, some type of incentive to PG&E to maintain these facilities as they have. They seem to be proven good stewards so far. I don't know what the exact census is on that, but we're asking to have it all instead of what we actually need.
Yeah, I'll just respond briefly. There are other people in line, and I don't know your name, but that's fine. The speaker. Okay. TUD is looking at all ways during these negotiations to limit the impact on the ratepayers. And that includes a variety of efficiencies. That includes looking at how PG&E has operated the system and how TUD could operate it differently and not incur the costs that PG&E has. We're looking at all of it. And that's why we hired Tom. Tom has a lot of experience in these facilities. And we also have other consultants that have looked at the facility, and we are looking at ways to improve the efficiency and reduce costs. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Tom Trott, then we'll go to Sean Crook.
Hi, thank you, everybody. Tom Trott, Twin Heart Community Services District. First, I just want to applaud TUD for having the courage to have these discussions. These are discussions that have been around for probably more than a century, and we have to engage in them. And so I just want to say how thrilled I am that you are engaging in it. There's so many people here involved to have the discussions, whether it comes to fruition or not. These are things that are critical for our community. As you know, water is the lifeblood of our community, our economy, our environment. It's so important to everything we do. I grew up here, and then I went away, and when I came back, I started working about 8 years ago for Twin Heart CSD, and that's when I first realized that our water supply here is so one-dimensional, our water portfolio, so one-dimensional and reliant on a company whose primary mission is not water supply, whose secondary mission is not water supply. And that's a real concern for us as a community when that is the lifeblood. I've had the pleasure of working with other agencies, water agencies across the state who have been in similar situations to where we are now. And many of them have passed up opportunities like this. And then 30 to 50 years later, they come back realizing that they were desperately in need of them, if they had those opportunities still. And the cost, and I know the costs are a big deal because we are a customer as a CSD. I'm also a customer personally. But the cost when you forfeit or you defer something like this 30 to 50 years into the future, the costs go 10 to 20 times more. And I've been involved in some of those projects. And so we need to understand the cost of not doing anything as well. And then also, I just wanted to echo some of Director Ringen's comments from the first session there about this being a community-wide deal. This is not a TUD deal or even a county. This is all of us. It impacts all of us. It dictates in some way the future of our community for a long time. And it's important that we are all involved. And so I appreciate Director Ringen's list. I just want to also make sure that Twin Heart Community Services District is on that list as a partner in these discussions and wants to be involved going forward, because this is a critical issue for our entire community. Thank you.
All right, next up is Sean Crook.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'll speak briefly as the past president of Tuolumne County Farm Bureau, and my concern in that capacity obviously is to our ag users that are on the system. And we can go back to the last increase when I was very vocal about it pricing our raw water users out with that increase. And we have seen that come true, and that was evident by Ed Pattison's comments on a recent commercial project that was in the newspaper a few months ago, when he mentioned on a will serve that it's not a water issue. We have this water, as we've had a lot of raw water users reduce their contracts. Well, he didn't mention the reason for that. And from our members, the reason for that is because of the increase in that water from the last rate increase. So when I see this and we talk about the cost and the deficit and the mechanisms to pay for it, I think we can agree that it's going to fall on the ratepayers one way or the other. So how do we best mitigate and deal with that? And because you're never going to get an argument from me that owning water rights is a bad thing. But where it's hard for us on outside organizations to jump on board with any of this is obviously we're not a part of the negotiations. And I will never recommend to our members to support a contract or a process that we're not a part of and we don't see how it is playing out. And with that portion of it, I'm curious and would like to hear more of a discussion about the inclusion possibly of the powerhouse at Spring Gap, because that seems to be the asset that PG&E does not want to let go. And from my position, that is alluding to the fact that it's part of the system that actually generates revenue and could possibly provide for the rest of this. And so that's where my question is regarding Spring Gap. And then also to make sure that we are not abandoning other means of getting water. We know about the rights to the spill from Donnell's after it fills. We know about the old tunnel that is up there, and investigating other places along the system to get that water out of Maloney's, because we realize the problem with that is the cost of running those pumps and why that's been cost prohibitive over the years. And so that's really where we're at, and love the idea, but until we see a lot more information and on the contract, I can't recommend to our group to get on board with it till we see how they're actually going to be affected by it, because the last thing I want to do is advocate for something that is going to further price our members out of being able to get water for their agriculture operations and put them out of business. Thank you.
That's all we have at the moment for public comment that I could see.
Thank you, Corey.
Actually, I apologize. Tom Trott just raised his hand again. I believe he might be the last one.
Am I on?
Tom, did you have a comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to say one more thing that I meant to mention is there are a lot of complications and costs that come with this, but with every opportunity, there's also many opportunities for creative solutions and revenue creation. And I just want to make sure that we don't exit these discussions before we really fully explore those options. And I know TUD is doing that, but I just want to have that be known to everyone that an opportunity like this brings other opportunities to us as well. And it's important that we flesh all of those out and are willing to be creative beyond what's on the surface to really see if something like this is doable. I'm certain there are potentials that we can do things that have little impact on our ratepayers as well. There's a way to really go about this and steward it in a really good way and smartly. And so I want to make sure that, yes, we're all concerned about the cost, but we should also be looking at all of the potential opportunities as well. Thanks.
All right, Jesse, I see that you have your hand raised, and then we also have Dana Baker after that.
My comment's very short. I just wanted President Balin and the other attendees of this call to know, or this Zoom to know, that Tom Johnson has a hard stop at 1 p.m. and I have a relatively firm stop. I can hang out a few minutes after 1 p.m., but we will lose Tom at 1 p.m. So if there are questions that you think are more appropriate for Tom, please get them in, and I can hang out a few minutes afterward to address any lingering questions. Thank you.
And Jesse, this is Ed, the general manager. I, first want to mention, I really thank the Tuolumne Utilities District Board of Directors for hosting this today. Spectacular conversation, long in coming, but I'm glad we're here. I want to thank the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors for participating, the Sonora City Council, our community leaders, John Buckley, and others. I think all the statements made today represent really a broad encompassment of all the issues. I did want to address one specific water rights issue was brought up by a gentleman. I don't think we have the name, but the number ends in 417. He asked if you could separate the facilities from water rights and pay PG&E. That is a creative statement, and one in which I know our expert team is turning over every stone possible to look at and explore all options. But when it comes to water rights, typically water rights are connected to facilities. And so we're looking at pre and post 1914 water rights, some of the most senior in the state, but they are tied to, the storage rights are tied to Pinecrest Reservoir, Lyons Reservoir, and then there's a direct diversion, which is one of the most valuable rights of 52 CFS and year round. So we didn't get into some of the real complex legal issues associated with water rights. But I think the point was made earlier in this discussion that when snow melt and into spill and natural flow ends, that's the end of water available to divert into Tuolumne County. That's when the direct diversion right at Phoenix ends. And that's when Tuolumne County relies on storage water. And that's when we begin to rely on Lyons Reservoir first, and then lastly, Pinecrest Lake. And that's why the team, while we've been exploring all these options, have arrived at a package here that we think is in the best interest of Tuolumne County, because we do rely on the natural flow. It's extremely valuable, but we also rely on that storage. And it's next to impossible to separate those rights from those facilities, hence the package that's being presented. But I think that this discussion today has been robust and healthy. I just want to assure the community that on behalf of the board of directors and staff at TUD, we're extremely sensitive to cost and expenses, and we're doing everything we can possibly do to be creative, hardworking, and looking at every possible option to keep rates down, not just on the acquisition of the PG&E facilities, but as we look at the Central Valley Project contract for New Maloney's water, for partnerships, for collaboration, and it extends beyond that. This just occurs on a daily basis in terms of how we treat water for entering into the potable system, how we move water through the raw water system, and then how we treat water on the wastewater side and make it available for reclamation. And I understand Sean Crook's concerns regarding raw water rates. I'm a big agricultural supporter. I come from an agricultural family and I'm a member of the Farm Bureau. I think that's an important consideration and an important topic, and we're happy to talk about that. But there is a lot of laws that get involved with pricing water. We could spend an entire day on that particular topic. So I won't go down that path right now, but appreciate those comments and look forward to our upcoming discussion. So with that, I'll hand it back to President Balin, and thank you for the opportunity to talk today.
Real quick, I do need to announce that Supervisors Campbell, Half, and Kirk will be leaving the meeting at 1, just to let everybody know. And we do have one more public comment after that too.
Okay, maybe that could be our last public comment. And we're not done by any means. So with that, and I know Tom's probably left.
And also Jaron Brandon just notified me that he's also going to be needing to leave at 1.
Okay. And who's our last comment?
From what is being indicated, Dana Baker.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to quickly provide my perspective as a younger member of the public who was born and raised here and is likely going to be in this area in 50 years or so. I'm thinking at least that far ahead, where climate scientists have warned that water is going to dramatically increase in scarcity everywhere. We know that any public resource being privately owned is basically setting people up to be potentially allowed to die for the handful of owners' profits. That's what's happening in Texas right now with energy. That's what happens in our healthcare system, has happened in transportation systems, and will happen in any similar structure. So yes, I do think it's urgent to get public resources out of private hands, even if it's expensive now, to prevent those higher costs in the coming decades. And lastly, I'm just incredibly grateful to the current TUD board we have, whom I believe are capable, knowledgeable, strategic, as well as having the long-term interests of the public in mind. So thank you all so much for working on this for us.
Thank you, Dana. That's a nice note to end it on. And Sean, I'll get back to you. We are going to have a revisit at our rate structure in our water committees. We've brought all our committees back. And so that's a great funneling process to have these kinds of discussions also. And we will also be discussing, like I said, our water needs assessments, where we really look at our future and the future generation that live here and figure out our water needs.
Barbara, this is Supervisor Kirk. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
We can hear you, yes.
Hey, just letting you guys know, we lost 3 members of our board, so we no longer have a quorum. So with that, the Board of Supervisors will have to adjourn our portion of the meeting. But I just want to say thank you. This has been great. I'm glad to see us hammering out these details and be transparent. I really look forward to working with the TUD board and the rest of the partners, Buckley, everybody, just to make this a good thing and an honest conversation moving forward. So thank you guys.
Thank you. I think that's a good note to end it on.
All right, well, I'm gonna hit this gavel thing and we're gonna close it up here. So thank you guys. God bless. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. This concludes our meeting for today. Thank you.
All right, and with that said, I'm going to conclude the February 18th special board meeting with TUD and the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors. Have a great day.
And on that note, for the city council, I will adjourn the city council portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Mark. And as the president of TUD, I will adjourn this meeting as well. Thanks, everyone.
And so on a side note, I was worried that we might get cut off before I had a chance to formally adjourn, but thank you all for putting this on. And I would like to thank the public for their input and look forward to further discussions, because this is going to be hard and complex and we need lots of input.
Well said. This is the first step, is information sharing. Yes. Thanks, everyone.